Welcome to DasGeek. I'm so excited to do this video. One of the patrons of Destination Linux asked if I would do a video after talking about the new Blender 2.80 to show you how to do video editing on Linux. Now, when you first come into Blender, you're going to be at a screen kind of like this, except it's going to have like a 3D ball here and a little lined camera here. So don't let that throw you off. This is going to be worth it. Now, video editing in Blender is different than video editing anywhere else. There are some similarities, but for the most part, it's going to be a completely different workflow. So you're going to have to get yourself in that mindset to begin with. The advantage of using Blender as a video editor is if you can learn the interface of Blender, then for video editing, then you can take it to the next level and start utilizing it for all of the other amazing things that it does. 2D, 3D animation, sculpting, gaming, character design, all of these different things that are within this magnificent, amazing tool. And there are plenty of game studios and other companies that have moved, big game studios that have moved solely for their developers into a Blender platform. So learning it is a skill you could utilize out there looking for a job. So it's definitely worth your time. Now, is it going to be as easy as or better than Kdenlive or Lightworks? It's different. A lot of the same things you can do, but when you look at some of the things you can add in, for instance, creating your own intros and outros with some of the 3D animation capabilities of this tool, there are some power that is outside of the suites like Kdenlive and Lightworks that Blender is capable of. But again, it's not necessarily better, it's different. But once you learn this interface, it's going to be much easier for you to learn other portions of Blender, and I think that would be advantageous for anybody. So I'm going to show you the basics of video editing within Blender. I've already done this video. By the time you see this, I've already rendered the video in full so you can see the quality and things of it. The first thing you're going to want to do is go up here to File, click on New, and then go to Video Editing. So that's going to bring you into an interface that looks very similar to this. Now, I've made some changes here, but for the most part, this is the default interface that you have. You may have a little smaller sequencer down here than I have. You might have a bigger viewer preview window up here, and your files may be smaller depending on your screen size. But for the most part, all these panels are what you would normally see now in Blender 2.80. Now, it's important to remember that Blender, if you get it from the repositories for whatever distro you're in, is probably going to be 2.79b, unless you're on a rolling release distro like an OpenSUSE Tumbleweed or Arch, then you probably have 2.80 available now. Otherwise, if you're in a distro that utilizes snaps, there is a snap available that is 2.80. So you can download the snap, or you can go to Blender's website, download the tar file, extract it, double click the Blender executable, and boom, you will be in Blender 2.80. So what you'll see here is I have a video that I am editing right now. It's a FreeNAS video where they sent me a bunch of goodies from IX Systems. So it was a simple video, so I wanted to utilize this as a great way to show you some of the video editing capabilities in Blender. But first, we've got to kind of learn the interface a little bit more. So the first thing I want you to notice is up here in the corners where you see this editor type. You're going to see there's one here. There's an icon over here for editor type. There's an icon over here for editor type. There's an icon down here for editor type. So you can see the way that Blender works is it breaks everything up into these different panels here. And these panels can be the same or different. So if I go down here, for instance, and I want this to be a graph editor, I can make this a graph editor. I can also add additional panels in if I want, or I can switch that back from a graph editor back to the previewer that we had before, which is right here. And then I can also make this a sequencer and preview and turn this into something else. Maybe I want this to be graphs instead, or I can just have this be a preview. But these editor types are very important, because if you find you're missing some of these over here, you have a different view than I do, then you could probably go over and make sure you're on the same editor type. Additionally, the icons, you see this is toggle switches. This is toggle switches. So I know that this is properties over here. And this is a, what do they call this in the movies? The little clap box thing. And and you can see that's for the video sequencer. You can see the icon over here matches the icon up here, and you can see down here we have a little clock. So we know that the clock, if we match that up with this, is the timeline down here, which comes with the play buttons. You can also resize these windows, so I can make them smaller or I can shrink them back down just by dragging into the corners of these. The same goes for making things smaller horizontally and vertically in this interface here. So the next thing that you want to get into is your preferences. So if we come down here into our preferences and then down to system, you can see here that you can set your render device. Now, if you have a GPU like Radeon 7 and NVIDIA, those type of things, then these are the settings that you'll want to play with here. Now, a little note about OpenCL and AMD. OpenCL is part of AMD's Pro drivers. It's not a part of their free drivers. The good news is they give you the option to install just the OpenCL headers. You can download that from AMD's website and install that, but it only supports certain distros. Now, of course, Arch has fixed this and put the OpenCL headers in the AUR, but if you're running an Ubuntu, for instance, you need to be on 18.04 to get those headers. It's a little bit of a mess, something hopefully AMD and the Linux distros get together and fix eventually in the future. And if you have, of course, NVIDIA, then you could use the CUDA here if you want that. You also have the ability to set how many undo steps and memory. You have sequencer cache limit, which I have here set to 19,597. I have 32 gigabytes of RAM in this. Keep in mind, this is in megabytes. So you can set this up to the cache limit that you want and find works well. I've kept this on OpenAL soft and these things default. You have save and load information, different file paths if you want to set, but I didn't change anything in any of these areas here. You also have add-ons that are in testing and from the community, and this is where you install new add-ons. There are add-ons out there specifically for video editing in Blender. I've kept this one completely clean so you can see it as a default, but there are plugins that will help you with rendering and making some of the keyboard shortcuts a little easier in there. Speaking of which, key mapping is a really cool place to come and hang out because you'll learn all of the shortcuts out there to do different things like cutting with K or Shift K, muting different strips, locking strips, reloading, and these are all considered strips down here in your sequencer. So these are all of the commands: jumping to different strips, removing gaps, cut multicam, selecting, add timing marks, transform. All of that can be done here, or you can learn what the shortcuts keys are here under key map. So that's pretty much everything that I think that I've changed in here. So we'll get out of the Blender preferences now, but you can set that up with your system that matches your system perfectly. Again, in this case, we have editor type of properties over here. So if you don't see that, just go over to this little drop down and change it to properties. And you have some additional options here. Now under context output, which looks like a printer printing out a picture, you have something called resolution. Now this is very important to pay attention to here because your resolution will not automatically switch for you. I'm going to show you once you get all of these settings saved, a way that you can save it so every time you open it, it will default to the resolution and things that you set or use most often. My monitor is 2560 by 1440, so that's what I have here, but you want to check and make sure that this is a good default for you. If not, you can just use the slider and change it to match your particular resolution that you filmed your video in, because you want your export to match that in most cases anyways. You also have a frame start and a frame end. Your default, you probably have a frame end of like 200 or something, which means if you play this, it's only going to play the first 200 frames over here that you see in a lighter color. And so that right here is the lighter color than the other parts of the gray, because that is basically how Blender likes to default out. So I like to change this to something a little bigger, like we can change it to 33,000. Then I can hit my home key and I can see all of my frames in one, and we can see that that gives everything. There's nothing in a dark color here. I'm going to do one more thing, turn on key monitoring so you guys can see the keys that I'm pressing as well, so in case I forget to shout one out. All right, so now I have Keymon set up here in the right-hand corner. So the other thing you're going to want to set is your frame rate. Most people probably shoot their video in 30 frames per second. I shoot mine in 60, so I've changed that to 60. Down here in output, this is where you're going to save your file. Now I want to save my file somewhere different. I want to save it under videos. So I'm going to click on videos and click accept. That way, when I've rendered out this file, it's going to render it in home DasGeek videos versus in my temp folder. Also, you probably have a default here of like JPEG. Well, you're not making just pictures, you're making videos. So you're going to want to change that to something like FFmpeg video. And in your container, you're going to want to change it to MPEG-4. Video codec H.264. I choose perceptually lossless, but you can use any of these you want depending on your system and how long it takes to render the type of video that you've done. The audio codec is AAC here that I have selected out of the options, but you could choose MP3 or anything else FLAC that you're interested in. So those are the settings there that we want to set. Finally, down here in this area, you have a view and you have a proxy and cache section here. Under the proxy settings, you can see that I'm trying to get as much cached as I possibly can so that the scrolling through the various parts of this video are not ridiculously slow. Wow, when you freeze frame your face, you really look even stupider than you do in real life. But that's basically what you're trying to stop there. Is set up some proxies and strip proxies, and I'm not fantastic at this or understand it entirely, but I know there is some of these settings will help with your ability to navigate your sequencer effectively. The next thing you'll notice is that to get a clip in here, first of all, let's take something like this simple screen. You can just click and drag. So you can see when we move that file in here, we got two files. We have one that is a video file and one that is our audio file. So now that I've selected one of these, I get a different set of options. I can go up here to strip and get some more information on that. I know this is the audio file, so it's odd that it put the audio file above the video file, but I can always just move it around if I want. Of course, you want to realign it if you were going to keep this in the video, but I'm not, so I'm just kind of moving it around manually. So this would be my video file, and it makes sense because it gives me a start and end time and some video options like transforming, crop, and offsetting. And down here, I have volume, pitch, and pan that comes up in the strip setting tab over here on the right. And I can change things like volume and pitch, so I know this is my volume and pitch. But one thing that would make it a lot easier is if I could see the waveform. That would tell me instantly that's an audio file. So you can go over here and click on display waveform, and that will show you the audio waveform, which is very important when you're editing out parts where you say or and all of that type of thing, is to be able to see your long pauses, the waveforms there. So clicking on display waveform, really, really important for editing videos out there. Now I want to get rid of these, so I could either hold down shift and click each one, and that's going to highlight both and then kill them that way, or I can hit B to kind of draw a box, and that highlights both of them as well. I prefer the B and box. I can also hit G and then let go, and I can drag these, now that they're both selected, around different areas of the timeline if I want to. So once I left click, it will let go, but I'm going to box these again, and then we're going to go ahead and delete them. It's going to ask me, do I want to erase the strips? I'm going to say yes, and they are as good as gone. So one of the first things that you probably want to do in a video is make a cut, and that's really simple. In Blender, you're going to go to the area you want to make your cut, and you're just going to hit the K key. That would be if you selected the strips that you want to cut. So I selected both of those holding shift and left clicking them and hit the K button, and you can see now I have a cut with these. Now, in some cases, you can see these dotted lines going down. That's because those are sections that I've marked that I want to edit during this video. I've already watched the video. I'm not going to torment all of you to watch one of my videos. That would be horrific. So I'm going to go down here. I made marks of the areas that I want to edit, and also add an outro in here, and we'll be done with the video. So now we've done a lot of these settings that we want to keep. I'll go down here one more thing, and you can look at this here. We have AV sync. You can turn on audio scrubbing, which means when you move your cursor across, it's going to still play the volume as well. I don't find that particularly useful in most cases, so I leave it off. You can see I have animation editors turned on, and that's about it out of this section here. So now that we've done all of these changes, as far as we've made changes to how the interface looks, we've set our resolution to the proper resolution. You're probably on something like 1920 by 1080, or maybe you're on a higher resolution. We've set all of these features up. We've also gone into preferences and we've made our changes here to make sure that our system is utilizing the correct cycle render devices here. And we've updated our cache. We've done all of these things. We want to save this so I don't have to do this every single time I open up Blender. And that's where you're going to come to defaults and you're going to click save startup file and you're going to click OK. And now you are going to have this open up every single time. What I like to do is delete everything out of this, have no clips, and then save that default file so that when I open it up, I don't have anything left to erase. But the way I did it here, it's actually going to open this up with all of these settings and these clips here in place, but that's okay. It's pretty easy to delete stuff. So if I put my cursor at the very beginning and then I hit page up key, you can see that it's jumping to the various cut points that I have. If I hit home key, I could see everything at once. And now I could page down and jump between those points. Once I get my cursor back in here and jump between those points again. Hitting home key, you can see everything. It's going to the very beginning, then it's going to the cut point there. That's between the intro and the beginning of the new clip. And that's the cut we just made. And that's the end of the video. So for instance, if I wanted to add my outro right now, I would just page up to the very end here of my video sequence. And then I would add in my ending by just clicking and dragging it in. Now I can see if they added in the video over top of the audio again. In this case, they did not. So I could select both of these if I want to move them. Hit the G key because that allows you to grab and move this and try to position it. You can see in red, it's going to overlap. I don't want to overlap. Now I can hold down the control button and it's automatically going to snap to the end of the video and hit the left click. And now I have my ending right at the end of the video. Really easy way to add in clips is just to click and drag them. You can also click and drag from your file manager. You'll notice this isn't like other video editors where they create their own organization folder structures within the tool itself. This is using your file system, the files that you have in your computer. So it's a good idea to go in there and organize your videos into a folder before you're ready to do your project, because Blender is going to use it exactly as you have it in your file system. So if I use my middle mouse button, I can make this area bigger, and that's going to make getting through the various sections, scrolling through the various sections a little easier and scrubbing versus trying to do the entire thing at once. The one thing that I'm frustrated with Blender is its performance. I think it actually has a better performance on some of my laptops than it does on this machine, which is strange when it comes to rendering. But on those, I only played with 2 or 3 minute clips. This is a 10-minute clip, but in something like Lightworks, where you've got a gigantic clip, I just don't have the stuttering around like I do. You can see how long it takes for the cursor to follow me along as I'm holding down the left mouse button and scrubbing through. Now, it does go faster once you've scrubbed through a particular area, like it's loading it in cache, but there has to be a way to make that better, and I'm not sure what that way is. It's probably something with the proxy and cache that you do here. I've tried to set up the different proxies and cache, but if you know, leave it in the comments below what I might be doing wrong in some of my settings here, because I just can't figure out why it's so slow. In any case, let's get to an edit point and we'll see here what edit I wanted to add. I don't even remember. It might be a cut. It looks like if I look at the audio file, this was a long pause that I'm wanting to cut out. So let me zoom in on that area. And then we'll play it once and then we'll make our cuts, and that will show you how to cut and remove, and then also remove gaps here. So let's hit play. That I was talking about here, in case you're interested, I would say that. So it looks like I took a breath there. Not a terrible thing. People would probably forgive it, but let's go ahead and get rid of it. So I'm going to highlight my 2 clips. I'm going to hit K, and that's going to create my first cut. And then I want to get rid of some of this pause here. So I'm going to move this editor right to that edge. Maybe we'll make it a little bigger so I can even see it more. There we go, right to the edge of where the volume starts kicking off, and I'm gonna hit K again. Well, once I highlight my clips, hit K again, and now we have our second cut. So now this is a separate piece, a separate slice from the rest of the video. So I can highlight this, and I can remove it here. So I'm gonna hit delete, and it popped up too quick for it with the little message, but you can also just hit the delete key versus going through the right click menu here. Okay, so now we want to remove this ugly gap that is here that we've created by removing that clip. So to go ahead and remove that gap, what we have to do is get our cursor onto the other side. So if we do the page up and page down, we can move between these gaps. If I try to do a remove gap here, you can see nothing happens. But if I go over here and do the remove gap, boom, it brings them both together. All right, so now that we've made our cut and it sounds pretty good, we've got a nice flow here that goes between the two scenes. We can move on to our next edit that we want to do. And this one is another popular edit. People like to add in, text overlays. You want something to have text on here. Maybe you made a mistake in what you were saying, or you want to add some additional information that you didn't get in your video. So let's see where that edit might be. IBM Xeon server that I got. So here I purchased an IBM server. I wanted to give some more specifics on exactly what that server was. So over on the right hand side, I actually have that text. So what I want to do is right at that marker, right where I start mentioning it, I'm going to go ahead up here and click on add and then text. So that's pretty simple. And we're going to go into the text field here, and I'm going to add in my text for exactly what kind of server that I have. You can see there's the font, there's the size. So I can increase this size and make it a little bigger, but it's kind of odd. I'm not seeing it anywhere. And you notice that we have alpha over chosen. If we do alpha under, I still don't see my text. And that's because by default, it has put the text box underneath all of these strips. So everything else is on top of this video. Now I can easily fix that by zooming in here into that section so that I can grab this little text. I can select it, hit G. Now we see the text in the video preview. And I'm going to go ahead and change that size because I made it way too big there. And I can start moving its location left and right and the y-axis up and down. And I can also do a wrap on this. So I can start wrapping the text since I've got a lot of text here. Maybe I'll keep it about that size. And I will move it over to the right. And you can see I'm using these locations on the right-hand side under strip for this. I can also come over here and extend it because maybe I want the text to stay on the screen a little longer. It's not going to hurt anything. So I'll extend it out some more frames there. If I want to add a shadow to the text, I could. So I can add some shadowing there to kind of make it stand out. The other thing I can do is if you have fonts installed, you can go up here and choose a different font that you want. Of course, you could always import your own art. So once I've done that, now I can play this section and it will have my text overlay on top of it. So this would be a great way to add any text that you want on your screen. Got off of the internet. There you go. So it doesn't stay up there too long. So maybe I'll make it a little longer here. I got off of the internet, off of eBay, and we can make it even a little longer. That I got off of the internet, off of eBay, and turned it into a free NAS server. That done. There's one more thing too that I need to get fixed now that I think of it. My output for my audio, those who've been following this channel and watch me do Caden Live video editing tutorials and Lightworks video editing tutorials know that I'm just too lazy to re-record the audio here. So if I select this clip, it's just too loud. It blows people's ears out at the beginning. So here's where I can go ahead and adjust the volume to something lower, maybe around 300, and you can see the waveforms kind of go down a little bit. And if I replay that intro, that's much better on the ears. It's less than when I'm even coming on the screen. The volume's not as high, so that's perfect. So now we've got two edits done. We've shown you cuts using the K key. You select your various strips and then hit K, and you're going to cut them. We've shown you adding in an overlay of text, but one of the things people also like to do a lot is add in picture. Like maybe I want to show a picture of something, or I want to do a video in video where I have a video, another video playing. Well, the capability, whether you're doing a video or another picture, is the same. So I'm just going to grab this random, looks like benchmark here, and I'm going to add it in. And it added it down here. But again, we can select it. We can hit G and we can move it right here. I can zoom in on this, click it, and extend it out some here. There we go, to make it a little bit bigger. And you can see what it's doing right now is it's actually taking over the whole screen. So you can't see anything underneath it. And that's not what we're looking for. We want to have this be somewhere in the upper left-hand corner of this video down here so that it's not covering the entire screen. In some cases, you may want it to cover the entire screen. And then in that case, this would be perfect for you. But we want it to have a little bit of an overlay. So with this picture selected, I'm going to go to add and then click on the effect strip and click transform. So you can now see that we've added a transform up above, and this gives us some different options that we don't have over here. Specifically is the ability to scale down here for uniform scale. So if I check that box on uniform scale, I can shrink that down and then I can start moving this box where I want it. Perhaps I want it over in the top corner here, like we mentioned. So now I have my picture that I can play, trying different distros and things because of that. And you can see that we have our nice picture in picture here. You could do the same if this was a video or anything else. You're going to add your picture in, drag it in. You're going to put your add the effect of transformed, much like we did when we added text. You can also see there are some other things that you can play with depending on what you have here. So now maybe I want to add a nice fade for when this image comes into the picture. So what I can do here, and you could do this if you've created a gap and you want it to fade between a cut or something you've done, but I'm going to do it here before we get into this image. So first we need to just go to add and click on a color, and you can see it gave us a nice color black here. So we can put that right here because we're going to kind of fade in to this sequence. And now that I have that, I can click on the video that I'm wanting to fade, and I can click on my color and I can add a transition, and we're going to do a wipe transition here. So now that I have my wipe transition in place, trying different distros, you can see that it kind of fades
trying
to
different
black.
distros and things because
Now,
of
one of the
AMD
ways that
third
you
gen.
can change this is we can undo with Control Z, and I can click my video first, then my color, then add in a wipe in a transition, and the wipe will be slightly different.
Trying different distros
It'll
and things
fade back
because
to
of
the
AMD
picture
third.
instead of fading back into black. And of course, we can extend out and make this a longer transition and fade if we want. But that is the basics of adding a transition in. So it matters if you select your video first or if you select the actual color first as to what it's going to transition out of. So it'll either transition from the out to the video, or it will transition to black back to the video there. So that's how you can add transitions into your video if you want them. And in this case, I don't. And I also don't need this transform and picture in picture. So I'm going to go ahead and erase that. But those are two of the advanced things you can do within Blender. Now, clicking the home button again returns me so I can view the entire timeline from the intro on out. Now I have two other marks here. I'm guessing this is an area that I probably want to cut out, and that's probably what most people will spend a lot of their time doing. So if it is, we'll show you how to do that again. I'm going to zoom in with my middle mouse button. So let's get out this and stop making me sound like an idiot here. So we're going to do a little cut. Let's make it a little bigger even. I'm going to do a little cut here with K. Oh, let me select the clip. We're going to do both clips here because I want the audio and the video cut out in this case. So I'm going to do K. Then I'm going to move it over here to where I think I finally get my thought together. And we'll do another K here. And now I have this separate clip. So I'm going to go ahead and just select this piece and I'm going to delete. And I can go page down and then I can hit the delete key. Well, I don't want to do that. can hit the backspace key, and that will bring those two clips together. Push so much. All right, so here we're going to want to make a cut, and I'll do K. And it already has an end cut here because then it goes into my exit outro. So I'm just going to go ahead and select these two, and I'm going to delete them. And then I'm going to hit backspace, and that should roll right into my exit and fill your brains. Now I can notice here that I don't see any waveform, but I know it's there. So let me go unmute this strip. It seems like every time you do a delete, it automatically mutes the strip next to it, which is odd. There we go. So now you can see that this video preview was kind of weak, and I did that because I've been having all the stuttering issue. But if you clicked on that arrow, I'll show it to you again, this little arrow by the magnifying glass, if you click there, you're going to get another option for proxy. I can set the proxy size here to something a little bigger, like scene render size, and you can see that it's going to be a much clearer picture now. The other thing here that's really important, and this probably should have been covered first, is the frames that you need to set. So if I click on this clip here and I click on the arrow, I can see that I'm at 31,049 frames. This one is at 32,096. I really don't want to render. Actually, we did set this at the beginning, thank goodness. But I don't want to render this whole thing to 33,000 frames because people are just going to be seeing a blank screen. So by clicking on my last frame and clicking on the end of it, I know that I have 32,096 frames. So that's exactly what I want it to end to. And you can see that now it's brought it over and the rest of this is grayed out. And then if I scroll over to the left, we can see what frame we're starting on here. And it looks like the earliest frame is 4. So I can go ahead and adjust that. For some reason, my audio is a little bit behind the video here. So now I can set it at 4. And if I do my page up or page down and get to the very beginning, now starts right into the intro. There's no blank space there by putting the frame start to 4 now. So now I have everything ready. I've got all of my edits in. I've got my cuts. This is a pretty good video for me anyways. And so now we can render this out. So we're going to go to File. We're going to go ahead and save this. Okay, so to render it, I had an error at the beginning because I had this render a user-defined rendered region. So I unchecked that box because I don't need that. And I'm going to go to Render and Render Animation. And you can see that it begins this rendering screen here. And it's rendering this frame by frame by frame. You can see the frames that it's rendering at a time. And it's going to go ahead and complete this rendering cycle. I can hit the Escape key or move this out of the way if I want to get back to my main screen while this finishes rendering out this video. And when it's done, the video is going to be put in my home DasGeek videos. And well, you'll see this video because it will be up on YouTube. So that is all I know on editing on Blender. It's not a lot, but it's enough to get you started, at least do the basics of video editing in Blender. Leave your comments below. Let me know if you have some additional tips and tricks out there. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, get out there and fill your brains.